entire world. Within 100 years, they went from a group of people who were boycotted in the streets in Makkah to a group of people who wherever they walked, they conquered. Within 100 years, today's Libya was under their rule, today's Egypt was under their rule, today's Jordan was under their rule, today's Oman was under their rule, today's Yemen was under their rule, today's UAE was under their rule, today's Kuwait was under their rule, today's Bahrain was under their rule, today's Jordan, Syria, Palestine was under their rule, the entire Arabian Peninsula became under their rule, today's Iraq, Iran, Turkey were under their rule, today's Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Western Afghanistan, Southwestern Pakistan were all under their rule, today's Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, Spain, Portugal, all became under their rule. Why? Because Allah Ta'ala elevated them. Why? Because their respect, their love lies in Islam and Islam only. You know, they weren't bothered about living in luxury villas like you and I. They weren't bothered about staying on 5-star flights and going on 5-star flights and going on 5-star holidays like you and I. They weren't bothered about growing up and becoming rich like you and I. Because the only thing they were bothered about was Allah and Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and that's why they could sacrifice their all for Allah and Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Who were they? They were the golden generation. They were the golden generation. And when I say golden generation, no, I'm not referring to Gerard and Co, the so-called golden generation who went to Africa and were given a footballing masterclass by the Germans. I'm talking about the real golden generation, the only group of people who are entitled to being called the golden generation. I'm talking about the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, because you see the Sahaba were a group of people who epitomized, they practically personified, they criticized the term sacrifice for the sake of Allah. And you know, if you want to know about their sacrifice, if you want to know about the degree, the extent of their sacrifice, then all you have to do is ask me, because when you ask me, I'll ask you to open up Abu Dawood, hadith number 1687. Imam Abu Dawood rahmatullahi alayhi depicts the scenes preceding the Battle of Tabuk. And you know, the Battle of Tabuk was a battle that was fought between 30,000 Muslims. And you have to understand that these 30,000 Muslims were unwell equipped, they were inadequately prepared, and they were up against an army of 200,000 Romans. The Romans were the superpower of the time. What that means is that they had the latest weaponry, the most advanced war technique. Now when the Prophet ﷺ saw this, 30,000 Muslims up against 200,000 Romans, the narrations mentioned that he exhorted the Sahaba to donate generously. As Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ stood up and he said to the Sahaba, O Sahabiyo, donate generously. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu mentioned that as soon as the Prophet ﷺ said this, I became ecstatic, I became overjoyed, I became extremely happy, because I thought to myself, you know what, today Umar is financially sound. Today Umar is going to outcompete Abu Bakr. If there's ever going to be a day in which I outcompete Abu Bakr, then it's going to be today. You see, this was the situation of the Sahaba, that they would compete with one another in who can do the most khayr, in who can do the most ibadah, in who can do the most good. And you know, if you look at our situation today, what do we compete in? We compete in all those things that are related to the dunya. You know, if next man's rolling around in a Q7, then I want to roll around in a Range Rover Sport or an ML. If next man's got a business, then I want a bigger business. If next man's got one house, then I want two houses. If next man making his son into a doctor or a vakil, then I want to make my son into a rocket scientist or something just as ridiculous. You know, our situation today is absolutely preposterous. It's ludicrous, it's disastrous, it's stupid. You know, we compete in all those things that are related to the dunya. If you look at the state of the Sahaba, subhanAllah, they will compete in good, in who can perform the most salah, in who can give the most charity. As Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu mentioned, as soon as the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam stood up and exhorted the Sahaba to donate generously, I ran to my house, I came back to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, I put in front of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam half of my wealth. Half of his wealth he gave instantaneously. You know, how much can he give for the sake of Allah? A square of £5 note from my back pocket on a Friday. As Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu instantaneously comes and he puts half of his wealth in front of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, subhanallah. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam sees the amount of wealth that Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu has brought. He says to Umar, "Oh Umar, what have you left for your family?" Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu replies, "O Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, I have left for my family half of my wealth." He mentioned, I was happy. I thought Abu Bakr is a low time today. He mentioned, after a little while, Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu comes along. He walks to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He puts in front of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam his entire wealth. Every single thing that he owned on that day, his every bit of possession on that day, he put it in front of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam sees the amount of wealth that Abu Bakr has brought. He says to Abu Bakr, "Oh Abu Bakr, what have you left for your family?" Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu replies, "O Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, don't worry about my family because for them I have left Allah and Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam." This was the sacrifice of the Sahaba. This was the state of the Sahaba. This was the condition of the Sahaba, that they could sacrifice their anything and everything for the sake of Allah, because their respect, their love lies in Islam, unlike you and I. And that's exactly what we need to bring into our lives. We need to bring a degree of sacrifice. We need to bring sacrifice into our lives. What do we need to sacrifice? It's quite simple, my brothers. We need to sacrifice our sinful, nefarious, immoral lifestyle. We need to adopt the noble lifestyle of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. What was the noble lifestyle of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? It's quite simple. You see, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was a man who would talk softly. He would walk humbly. He would eat sensibly. He would sleep sufficiently. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was a man who would talk softly. He would walk humbly. He would eat sensibly. He would sleep sufficiently. He would dress properly. He would act fearlessly. He would think